subjectivity.
Great. Okay, so welcome everybody. We have Paul from Lighthouse joining us today, all the way from Australia. We're pretty excited to have you here. And Alon, Blox Staking CEO, and obviously the person behind ssv.network. We're going to cover a few interesting things today. So obviously we're going to talk about Paul's origin story in the Ethereum ecosystem, which I'm pretty curious about. The stuff that they're building right now, so everything that is on the roadmap, all the way to their experience with SSV, running an operator, running an SSV node, and sort of the way they envision SSV combining or taking place in the future of Ethereum after the merge, and obviously today as well. So without further ado, let's switch to the next slide. Great. So Paul, if you could walk us through your origin story, how you got started, what was your sort of the moment that you got hooked into Ethereum, and all the way to the point in which you started to work on an actual Ethereum client.
Yeah, absolutely, Adam. Yeah, so I'm a software developer by background. I worked originally in the audiovisual automation space, so I was doing user interfaces to control large physical systems like motors and projectors and stuff like this. It was kind of fun for a bit, but at one point, one of my friends, is a high school friend actually, started getting interested in Bitcoin, and I had a sort of peripheral interest in it, and thought, this is kind of cool, but it didn't really pique my interest. And then sort of around 2015, this friend and another friend who'd fallen a little bit more into the rabbit hole by that point came across Ethereum, and Ethereum really actually sparked my interest because, suddenly you could write, kind of applications on the chain. It wasn't just money anymore. So it took a kind of, I guess, sideline interest in Ethereum from about 2015. And we started becoming organizers of the Sydney Ethereum meetup, and we go along to that, and kind of just naturally over time we got more and more involved in Ethereum, started learning Solidity, got involved, and then in 2016 myself and two other friends decided to go to Shanghai for Ethereum DevCon 2. And that was really where we started to really fall into the crypto rabbit hole. So after that conference, I think, sitting in a train at some point, we decided that we were going to start a company called Sigma Prime. So that's where I work now. That's who maintains Lighthouse. So Sigma Prime was kind of started just as a bit of a side job because we wanted to work with the Ethereum Foundation. That was one of the founding goals. And we started to have people from the Ethereum meetups asking to work with us, and we thought that it'd be sensible to have a company. So Sigma Prime kind of started as a side project. And then we really found our footing when we started doing information security work, so smart contract reviews, because a lot of us had a background in information security. So Sigma Prime kind of picked up from there, became our full-time day jobs, and brought some other people online. And then in about 2018, I'd always had an interest in proof of stake. I've always really liked proof of stake, been keen to switch to it. I think it's a great system. I really like the environmental properties of it. So I'd been working on Vlad's Casper. So Vlad's Casper is generally a little bit more academic type of Casper than the proof of stake algorithms that we see in Ethereum today. So I started working on that, where Danny Ryan was also working. And then I saw Danny kind of stop working on the proof of works on the Vlad stuff and started working on what we call the Vitalik's Casper then, which is Ethereum 2. So then Sigma Prime started building Lighthouse as a side project. It was something that I was kind of doing in not necessarily my spare time, but just dev time at Sigma Prime. And it turned out to be pretty interesting. We just really wanted to learn the specification. The best way to learn is by implementing. So we started implementing it, and then started working more and more with Danny and the F2 team. And then Lighthouse just kind of evolved. From that, the Ethereum Foundation showed interest in giving us a grant to keep working on it. So when they gave us a grant, we kind of kicked into production mode. And then from there, Lighthouse just kind of scaled up like that. So kind of really organic, grassroots beginning for Lighthouse, and since then it's just got more grants, more funding, more people working on it, and yeah, now it's one of the core implementations, which is great.
How many people working on Lighthouse today on the implementation?
Oh, that's a good question. I have to count. So I think there's generally about order of like 6 to 8 people on it full time. And then we have some other people floating around. So Sigma Prime has the kind of Lighthouse side of things, and we also have the information security side of things, the smart contract and protocol reviews. So some of those security people come and go on Lighthouse a bit, but yeah, say order of like 6 to 10, depending on the day.
What made you choose Rust as the implementation language?
Well, I mean, initially, you can't hang around blockchains for too long without coming across Rust, and it was something that I just wanted a little bit more experience in. So I thought, why not learn S2 and Rust at the same time by implementing S2 in Rust. So that was kind of the beginning of it. But as we started using it, it became clearer and clearer. This is an excellent language, and the language that's the one that we want to use. I mean, it's got great security properties. It's fast. It's just a beautiful language. I mean, I think anyone that's programmed with Rust, especially in these areas, just falls in love with it.
Yeah. Under the Sigma Prime umbrella, do you have like a core activity, or everything is kind of balanced between the implementation team and the audit team and all of those activities you're engaged in?
It is actually pretty balanced. It's generally kind of 1-to-1 usually for the amount of power that we have on Lighthouse and that we have in information security. There was a time maybe in 2019, maybe 2020, that we had more on the Lighthouse side, but it's evening out. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw the information security side of things growing a bit larger than Lighthouse, just because that sector is just going crazy at the moment, and Lighthouse is reaching a kind of, I guess, more of a mature team size.
Yeah, we can kind of have.
Go ahead.
We kind of have the same setup, I guess, with Blox. We kind of a dual product company. We have on the one hand the Blox staking service, which is your usual staking service, although it's non-custodial. But on the other hand, you'll have SSV, which is kind of the more network oriented or protocol oriented product. And so we're going through, I guess, the same growth path you guys had. So, from one team doing both and then starting to separate the teams and have dedicated people doing that. You could have crossovers between them, but generally have those two teams, and we feel very much complement one another, because you'll have the needs of one can be served by the other, and so on and so forth. So it's pretty cool to see you guys managing to pull this off.
So
yeah, great, thanks.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, we have we originally had 4 founders. We're down to 3 now, but having kind of these 3 founders, 3 directors that really work well together makes it quite easy for us to run these 2 kind of separate branches. We don't need to have kind of like one central point at the top that needs to manage. We can quite easily spread out kind of like the C-suite, so to speak, across the two things.
Awesome.
Great. It's a bit of an often question, but real quick, how many people on average were in Ethereum meetups back in 2015 in Australia?
Oh, in 2015?
Yeah.
I think I might have started going in early 2016. I think there would have been maybe, like 20 people in the room, 10 to 20. We actually started pretty strong in Sydney. We had more people than Silicon Valley. We used to boast about that a bit. But yeah, so it picked up, and then it was classic. When the price was high, when it was booming, there's like 50 people in there. It's packed.
Yeah,
and then when it dipped, you got like 4 people. It's like Bocky, Pooh Bar, and us or something.
Yeah. It always this way. Yeah, always.
Yeah.
Perfect. So let's switch to the next slide. Great. So what are you currently working on in Lighthouse, and maybe other things you want to mention? I know you guys released a version a couple of hours ago, so thanks for taking the time. I know it's kind of hectic over there probably. But yeah, let us fill us in.
Yeah, sure. So I guess we've got, on the high level, we have 3 main tasks that we're working on presently in Lighthouse. We have, I guess we call it existing client maintenance. So that's maintaining the existing client we have, like adding features, improving, optimizing. Another stream that we've been working on is Altair. That, although Altair hasn't been released on mainnet yet, it's on the test nets, and we're actually not really doing anything on it anymore. So that project is pretty much done from our perspective. We just need to roll it out. Yep. And then the other one is the merge that we're working on. So I think probably going to talk about that a bit later. But in terms of the current client maintenance, there's quite a few things we're working on actually. So we're working on a couple of big features. One of them is weak subjectivity sync. So it's got a few names, also snapshot sync. Basically, it's where you can start Lighthouse. Teku already has this. You can start Lighthouse, and then it can download a recent, maybe order of days state from somewhere. Maybe you load it from your computer. Maybe it downloads it from some trusted service or another beacon node you have. And then what happens is the client takes that state and then it syncs forward from the network, and that's a job that takes an order of minutes. And then then you have kind of what we call the hot portion of the chain, the unfinalized part of the chain. And that is what you need in order to be a validator. So it means that you can go really quickly from new client to a validator ready client. And then what we do in the background is then download the history of the chain, so that then you can eventually, probably in the order of say hours or days, you can have the full chain and then work like a full node. So that weak subjectivity is something that we're working on.
I would say that also weak subjectivity sync is probably one of the first features using finality, right? If I'm not mistaken. I think it's like the first feature you can, like the average user can, or not the average user, but the average person running a node can actually feel now for the first time something which is significantly different than proof of work.
Yeah, I think so. Absolutely. That's a great characterization. It's funny that, so we call it, so weak subjectivity is actually a bit of a flaw in proof of stake. The problem is basically that if you have validators a long time ago and they were kicked, like they've slashed or exited, they've taken their funds out. If you're syncing the chain back in there, back before you know that they were kicked out of the chain, they can use their keys to sign messages and throw you off. So it's this kind of problem with proof of stake, but which necessitates the need for, if you're going to sync like order of years back from the chain, it necessitates the need for it necessitates you to have a trusted state somewhere in the present. So that's kind of a flaw, but what it does mean is that because we have finality and things like this, it opens up the door for doing these really quick syncs. So it's actually funny. It's like it's in some ways it's a flaw, but it's also a feature.
Yeah.
Anyone that's been in software before knows what it's like to call a bug a feature.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think that's pretty significant. I mean, if you look today at Ethereum 1 and even Ethereum 2 today, it takes a long time to sync those nodes. And once the merge happens, it will probably be almost double than what we're used to. And so it will be pretty significant to be able to sync up, at least start a node and sync it up to a point where you can actually use it to attest and so on fast. I think that's probably one of the biggest things anyone who's running infrastructure is coming across, the intensity of managing those nodes, the amount of resources they acquire, and so on.
Yeah, I agree. It's going to be so good to get it out there. It's going to be great in terms of like allowing us to do database upgrades. And if there's problems with the network, which involves corrupt databases, we can recover really quickly. Just an awesome feature to have. So that's build for our next release. We've had it working last week, so looking forward to getting it out there.
Yeah. Is this something that's going to come out soon?
Yeah, I don't know exactly in terms of, I'd say weeks or probably a month. So it'll be the next big release. Yeah, some of the other things that we're working on as well at the moment is we do a lot of analysis of the chain, so the chain in general. So the past week, especially, but over the past months, we've been looking at late blocks on the network. This is a bit of a problem. It's been a problem for a while. Who's producing late blocks? So we look at, try and figure out patterns about validators and who is producing these late blocks. And a lot of the time we can identify staking pools and get in contact with them. We're doing that. There's also been some problems with late attestation inclusion distances on mainnet lately.
Especially so the first slot of the epoch.
Yeah, that's right. Because there's a lot of nodes have to do a lot more processing on that point. So it's slowing down. So we've been looking at that, trying to look at the different attestation packing algorithms that clients are using. We found some places where they can improve, so we've given them some feedback. We've found places that we can improve. So that's one of the other things we've been working on, is really trying to look at the network, figure out how it can do better, and then start these kind of improve our own client, and then also start these initiatives across all of the clients to try and get things to do better. Because it's important to us at S2 as well. And also when there's these network-wide problems, we get a lot of users on our Discord complaining. So it's definitely in our interest to make sure everything goes well.
It's funny as you mentioned it, because we find ourselves, even at the earliest stage of the testnet, really needing the basic tooling for network exploration. Like if something doesn't work, it's very fast. You'll need some kind of a tool to tell you what exactly happens. And of course, the ssv network, its consensus is much simpler than Ethereum. But nonetheless, I mean, if something goes wrong, it's very hard to detect it without the right tools. And so, yeah, I mean, we're experiencing, of course, at the lower complexity level, but kind of basically the same thing.
I'm curious to know, is there sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead, please.
So I'm curious to know, is there a sort of an initiative in client teams, because we kind of don't know how things are run in the back end, to bring in more developers, to move faster, to bring in more funding, or is this sort of a stable situation, a status quo that is maintained, and you kind of want to, ride it along until the merge? I mean, how are things run?
I don't know of any. So the client teams kind of interact fairly informally. We have a couple of chat channels that we all chat on. There's no big move at the moment to onboard a lot more people. The merge has meant that the F1 teams and the F2, I'm supposed to use consensus and execution as the name. So F1 equals consensus, F1 is execution, F2 is consensus. But I'm not so good at that yet. So please excuse my bad language. So the merge has seen these kind of two teams come together, which is pretty cool to see. It's also interesting, like from the dynamic, you're bringing like two big kind of groups of people together and seeing how they work together is interesting. We don't have anything at the moment to try and bring on a lot more developers. I think Lighthouse would probably take one or two, but there is really, with the client development, there really is, I think, a sweet spot in terms of team sizes that they can handle. That beyond a point, you start like getting in like a bit of a management level if people aren't on the tools anymore, and that can be challenging for like a team like Teku, who's in consensus. They're probably a bit more familiar with that, and they have these managers. But some of the other teams, especially like I think Prism and Lighthouse, we're kind of keen to keep our teams small so that the people that have been on it from the from the beginning, people like myself, are still actively involved in coding and developing. We're not just managing people. So yeah, not a big push to get more teams involved in the moment. It's also interesting as well that the merge isn't really, this is kind of famous last words, but the merge isn't a whole lot of work for the F2 or consensus teams. So for us, the changes are fairly minimal. The problem, well, a lot of the work really is on the consensus side, because they have to figure out how to do sync all over again, basically, because we're the ones that, S2 clients are the ones that kind of give approval on whether a block is valid and should be imported or not. So they have to rethink all of these really core things. And they also have to deal with the legacy systems that are using their APIs. So I've noticed, I haven't been involved in it anymore, but I have noticed a few announcements saying that they're getting more funding. I would imagine they're putting on more people. So I kind of, go ahead.
No, I'm saying I saw that too. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're not actively growing very quickly at the moment. I think that's the case for the other F2 teams. We've got a pretty good team size on our end.
Perfect.
Great. So let's. Do you wanna add something? Perfect.
Sure. I just moved to the next slide.
Yeah. Great. So we're kind of switching the discussion more towards SSV, and I was curious to ask about your involvement in SSV, sort of your SSV origin story, how you got involved, how did you hear about the technology? Go ahead.
Yeah, cool. So I've been aware of SSV for a while. I remember like during the whole development of the F2 Ethereum consensus, there's always been the idea that you can support secret shared validators because it is, I mean, whilst staking pools are a good thing, and I'm not saying that they're a bad thing, the SSV really is the core decentralized ethos. It's like the hardcore type of shared staking that we want to see on Ethereum. So yeah, I've been aware of it for a while. I wasn't really aware that it was. It's a little bit like light clients in a way for me. It was always one of those things that I know that we had to support, but I didn't know that anyone was actually working on it. So I only really became involved in it once block staking got involved, actually. So I remember there were originally some calls, some SSV community calls, but there were, because I'm in Australia and the time zones aren't so good for me. So I remember the calls were at like 3 a.m. or something. So I couldn't go along to them, unfortunately. So I was kind of watching from the sidelines, and then Alon actually started hashing me on Discord to run a testnet node. So he's been doing that pretty reliably since. So I've been running the testnet nodes and making sure they work with Lighthouse. So I think for us at Lighthouse, we've got to be, there's a lot for us to deal with, and we have to be kind of, one of the important things is that we don't bite off more than we can chew. And I think SSV is kind of one of those things that's more than we can chew. So it's great that block staking and the other researchers involved have been working on it. So our kind of goal has been not to get too heavily involved in the technicals of it, leave it to other people, but do the best we can to make sure that Lighthouse is there and ready and able to support the effort.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, SSV as a concept was, I mean, I remember seeing Carl and Doncred's YouTube talking about SSV. I would say probably 2 years ago, and I think that YouTube was made even earlier. So I think as a concept it was pretty established or pretty known for a while. But yeah, it took getting closer to Ethereum mainnet, so Ethereum 2 mainnet, and or the consensus layer mainnet. And then kind of realizing the difficulties in running infrastructure for staking to actually make it a reality. I think it's much easier to explain today to staking providers why they need SSV, because it's much more concrete than abstract. So yeah.
So you're looking at giving so SSV, in my head, I imagine SSV is like the people's staking pool. So it's decentralized, non-custodial, and very kind of like technical decentralized kind of things. Are you also looking at using it for like staking pools, also implementing it, are you?
Yeah, I mean, we had a lot of discussions what to do with it. I mean, we got involved in probably mid 2020 with SSV and kind of helped out with the POC, and then later on the first testnet. And there was always internal discussions of what to do with it, because you can take it in 1,000 different ways. And the thing that made most sense to us is actually build an infrastructural layer of using SSV. So kind of an L0, if you will, right? If you have L1 is Ethereum, L2 you have all the scale networks, which can give Ethereum more scale, more throughput. L0 is kind of what we've imagined or what we saw mining pools in the past, but mining pools were very particular because you had to have physical things in order to participate in them. I think L0 now transfers to something that anyone can participate in, and it's basically the infrastructure on which Ethereum is getting secured by. And so we really love the idea of having an SSV network serve as an infrastructural component. And so you'll have a bunch of operators running SSV nodes, and then anyone can come and configure the way they want to use SSV, pick their own operators, choose how many, and so on and so forth. Where they're located in the world, and what Bitcoin node they're running, and what Ethereum 1 client they're running, and so on and so forth. And so we really love that idea. And that's kind of the mission we have right now. And so we're hoping, so kind of the short answer is we're not building staking pools with SSV, we're building infrastructure which we hope people will build staking pools on it, or any other kind of service, or even like a DIY, staker coming in and instead of running one instance of a validator, one instance of a beacon node, they can choose multiple instances and then spread out between Lighthouse implementations and Prism implementations and different geolocations, and choose 4, 7, 10 operators and really have the ability to configure whatever they want. I also love the idea that even if this network gets really, really big, it's still in its core very decentralized, because at the end of the day, it's just a bunch of operators spreading around shares between them. And so even if it's very, very big, it still has the potential to not be scary big, which can take down the network or have a significant influence on the Ethereum network. And so it's that's the direction we took it. And I think that's something we're also very much connected to on a personal level, rather than building a staking pool. We're much more techy in terms of the protocol level and the infrastructure needed. So it I guess fits very good with the core values of the company itself.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Yeah, I don't actually know that much about SSV. It's funny actually. It's like, when, not that I'm your manager, but when you're managing some people, it's great. If you have someone you know exactly what they're doing, and it's all good. And then it's almost better when you have someone where you don't spend any time understanding what they're doing, but you just see great outcomes coming from them. So I feel like SSV for me is like that. I haven't needed to dig into it because you guys have been doing such a good job with it.
I get like the Ethereum ecosystem is getting so big, it's very hard to track on a very detailed level everything that happens. Like, if you try to deep dive into L2 solutions, you can spend an entire career just doing that. I mean, it's important to understand how it works in high level, but like deep diving into every single neck and cranny in the ecosystem is so hard. It's so big now, and so you need to pick your battles, right? I mean, you need to pick what you want to be very, very specialized in, and then understand well how things are integrated between themselves. So yeah, I totally understand that. I mean, one of the things I loved is really picking up the code for the Ethereum beacon nodes, to better understand the specs and how things are working. And we're pretty knowledgeable about that, but you can never beat an actual implementation team in terms of the way they see things and know every single bits and bytes in the ecosystem and how things are working. But yeah, I think the collaboration between the teams that's why it's important. Like you can rely that the other teams are doing their job, but you can always ask back, and you can always enrich yourself with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Perfect. Let's switch over to the next slide. All right. So one of the core premises of SSV, and Alon touched that second ago, is basically to give stakers the ability to quickly diversify between different geolocations, staking service providers, and obviously clients. So from your perspective, what kind of role and the importance of SSV when it comes to client diversity and sort of keeping Ethereum fair and healthy?
Yeah, sure. Like I said, I'm not the expert here. You guys probably know better than me, but from looking at from understanding the way that your SSV nodes interact with the clients, it's almost like a little bit of a fan out method where the SSV creates a message and then sends it to a lot of different nodes. So it really gives the ability to, I guess, almost like hedge your bets between clients. You can spread out. If one client goes down, it doesn't matter because you've also sent the same message to another client. So I think that's great in terms of client diversity. I think one of the things that'd be really important would be making sure that, and I know that the Blox have started implementing the standard HTTP API, which I think is definitely supported by Lighthouse, supported by TechU. I think Nimbus might have an implementation of it, and I think Prism are working on it as well. So I think as long as I have all reason to believe you will do this, but as long as the SSV effort continues to align with the standards, help develop the standards, I think that it'll be a great thing in terms of client diversity. I know one of the things that one of the problems we have now is that the S2 clients, especially Lighthouse, isn't. If you send it an attestation that it's seen before, it'll give you back an error. And the idea behind that was that it's kind of like an early warning sign that you might be running two validators and you might be getting slashed. So this is kind of like, it's interesting that SSV nodes have raised an interesting point about like a bit of a trade-off space where we assume that, we're the only implementation you're using, when perhaps it is better for us to assume that you are in fact using multiple implementations. So the SSV nodes exploring that kind of space is really cool as well. So that'll force, I know I'm getting lots of, I use one of our testnet nodes that we monitor for node performance to run my SSV node, and it keeps logging errors. So it's annoying me enough now that I'm probably going to have to go and fix it. So I guess this is just like a small example of the of how SSV can help with client diversity.
I think the client diversity, one of the things that in its core is, other than having multiple implementations which are independent, is also picking up protocol issues or protocol inconsistencies. So one of the big things that I think Vitalik said is that, if you have one client only, you could have an issue or a diversion from the actual spec, but you'll never know it because everyone is using the same client. But here, one of the things that definitely is notable in Ethereum staking is that everyone is the client between themselves in terms of the base protocol are compatible, but almost I think everyone I know run the validator client the same as the Bitcoin node. Like nobody, I don't think people are mix and matching. And so there's definitely divergence there in terms of the way they interact with the Bitcoin node, which is very, very interesting. We're at the back end, we're using Jim's great project where, he just mapped the different implementations into one standard protocol where you can interact with multiple Bitcoin nodes from the same library. But hopefully we can pick up those differences and it's small things like, one Bitcoin node is you can fetch duties with indices and one with public keys. And so all of those different small things are, I definitely hope we can sort them out because they're very simple, but it makes life much harder to interchange between Bitcoin nodes and validator clients.
Yeah, absolutely. One of our guys runs a Lighthouse validator with a Teku beacon node on Piedmont, just to keep an eye on it. And we found something just the other day where even though we're following the standard API, we're expecting this string to be lowercase and Teku's sending it uppercase. So yeah, just people running those code paths is really helpful.
Yeah. By the way, is client diversity something that you guys are in any way concerned about? Is it something that occupies you, or you provide the option, just it's for the people to decide?
Yeah, it's definitely something that concerns us. We want to see client diversity. I think, for us, we're not the predominant client. So our goal has been, I think will continue to be, just to try and make our product better so that we gain so that we gain more users and therefore the network becomes diverse. It'd be challenging, I guess, for Prism, who are the dominant client, that the role for them would have to be, in terms of client diversity, would have to be to lose users, but that seems to be counterintuitive. So I'm glad I don't actually have to reconcile with that yet. We're not in that position, so I haven't figured out how to work like that. So yeah, definitely something that we're concerned about. So we just try and, for us, the solution to client diversity is to one is to make our product better, just to continue to improve Lighthouse, make it appealing, make it usable. And then the other is just to never, to try and avoid, I guess, outright competition, to try and avoid like grandiose claims of being better or trying to declare that users should use this. I mean, there's perhaps times where we have, but this is something that we try to avoid. So yeah, I think that's the goal for us. One is just to make our product better, and just not dump on anyone else. Just be supportive of all the other clients. Help them where we can, and just let our messaging just be, kind of neutral.
It's an amazing position to have in the blockchain space, where you provide a ton of value, but then in your sort of core statement, mission statement, you're doing zero marketing and zero, shilling of your product, because you know how it is in the blockchain space, everybody screams for attention. So I'm jealous. Perfect. So I think we can skip the next slide for the sake of time and move to the.
I did want to. I added something before we started. Rather than talk about your experience with SSV, I would definitely want to tap into your experience building Lighthouse and kind of the pitfalls or the things you've learned that we should pay attention to when developing SSV.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, Lighthouse has been very challenging for me personally, and I think Lighthouse has done pretty well as an implementation. Me, as I guess I would say, I've generally been a leader or one of the leaders of Lighthouse. It's been challenging for me personally in terms of burnout, dealing with the intense levels of competition and the speed at which things go. So it's one of the things, always take care of yourself, and you can perform better when you're well. But I'm sure you don't need me to coach you. But I think one of the things that Lighthouse could have done better early on was getting people involved in testnets. So that was definitely something that Prism led the way with creating these early testnets, getting people onto it. I think the polish of the documentation has always been very good. So this is somewhere that we could have done a lot better with Lighthouse. So that's getting more people involved and I guess presenting a nicer, more friendlier perhaps face to the people. So that's if I could do it all again, that's what I would have focused on. I probably would have tried to have got someone on board. I know personally for me and definitely some of the other people that are involved in the I guess leadership positions in Lighthouse, that's not where we shine. We're kind of engineering people who are like, we would have been the people that like VHS first beta is like a very old one. I might be losing the next generation on this, but it's like, Betamax was technically better, but it lost out because its marketing wasn't there. So I would have been the guy on Betamax being like, but it's better. Yeah, something I would have tried to find someone that's good at that kind of engagement and polish and stuff. Something I would have done differently. But I think we have done very well in terms of engineering throughout it. So perhaps its natural strengths and weaknesses. Yeah, that's something I would focus on. I would also, I think, really important during testnet phases and before mainnet starts or production usage starts is to try and figure out all your really bad breaking changes and make them then. I know there were some changes that we didn't make during testnets because we didn't want to disrupt users that now we're kind of stuck with. It's like some the user that we use for Docker is one of them, for instance. We really want to stop it from using root, but now we're so far into it, we've got all of these like downstream things that are going to break. So I think during testnets, still being confident to break things because it's better to break them then rather than later. Yeah, and I think for us, never moving too quickly was important for us as well. So we have like our consensus implementation in Lighthouse is fully checked arithmetic safe. So we have lints in there that stops us from using any overflowing or underflowing type of arithmetic. And we've always been really fastidious in getting reviews on this consensus stuff and just making sure that as we go along, in some of the less important areas we can move quickly, but when it comes to consensus and really important things that we moved, we tried not to move, we tried not to follow with the pace of our peers. We tried to do the best we could. My dad is really into F1 and he used to tell me that it's like, if if you try and overtake the person in front of you, you'll never win. But if you try and drive the track fastest, that's when you win. So that's something that we've really tried to focus on as well, is just trying to look internally and look how we can do better, and make sure that we keep producing a safe and secure client. So they're probably some of the main lessons I've learned on Lighthouse, I think.
One of the things that we struggled with, or maybe internally talked about, is when to launch a public testnet, because definitely the development cycle wasn't there in terms of stability, but like we could put a lot more work before that. But then it's always that trade-off, going faster with user interactions and then fixing along the way, or trying to wait. And I think in our DNA it was always, release it, especially if it's testnet. Like, it doesn't cost anyone anything, but release it and try to get the feedback as fast as possible. And so on the one hand, we're getting a lot of feedback. On the other hand, there's a lot of instability right now, and things break and things don't work and so on. But for us, it was always that balance, robustness through iterations, repetition, rather than developing on our own and then releasing it. So one of the things we're seeing now is that on our devnets, our closed devnets, the nodes are working perfectly. Like, everything is amazing. But on the testnet, it's not. And so for us, it was really kind of that I think one of the biggest decisions we did was to go with the testnet as fast as possible, even if things are not great on the cleanliness of the code and the stability of the code and everything, and also the exposure to others. I think that the ability for you guys and others to interact with SSV as early as possible, I think, is very important, both in terms of just spreading the word, but also just having that thing in people's mind that it's coming and it's building up. So yeah, that's definitely something my engineers hate, but I think it's very important to have something out as fast as possible, even if it means instability in the short term.
Yeah, I would, when we were starting Lighthouse, I would have been one of your engineers telling you to not go to testnet. But if I could do it again, I'd probably be the one saying go to testnet now. So yeah, good call.
Yeah, there's an importance to creating a network as soon as possible and getting more people on board. Perfect. So we have a last and final section, sort of an opinion section, where we ask you your opinion about things to come in Ethereum and sort of predictions, and obviously all the insider information you can give us about the merge. So where do you see the Ethereum staking ecosystem heading to after the merge, and obviously how it affects your work? Where do you see things going?
Yeah, good question. So I guess for us, one of the big unknowns for us looking at Ethereum after the merge is that, so as we see it now, we're going to have if you want to run an Ethereum node, you're going to need to have two pieces of software. It's a consensus client and an execution client, so an F2 and an F1 client. So like, say, Lighthouse and Aragon, for instance. I don't know. To me, I guess it seems a little bit annoying to have to run two bits of software and pipe them together. I'm not sure if that's going to be how things stay. That being, whilst it is annoying, it is also very possible for someone just to build an upstream package that just glues them together and presents it as one thing. So one of the things I'm not sure about is whether or not they're going to continue to stay as two separate pieces of software that kind of present very differently, and you pick and choose between the two, or whether it's going to end up that some of the clients are going to glue themselves together and present as one package. So for the teams like, say, Nimbus and Teku that have an F1 and an F2 node, it seems, I guess, natural to me that they would glue themselves together and become one unit. But then perhaps the idea of client diversity and the ability to, say, run Teku and Geth instead of Teku and Besu is appealing. So yeah, that's one of the things that I don't see. I don't understand moving forward. So I guess if it does go the way that they're going to glue the say, if the case is that the execution F1 node is going to subsume the F2 node and present together, then one of the things that we'd have to consider is starting to present ourselves as a library that software developers import, as opposed to a piece of software that users run. So that's one of the things I don't see. I think that it's a cross horizon at the moment. There's a few things we don't know. One is we don't know exactly what you'll need to do in terms of proof of custody and the different kind of state providing games that you'll need to play. And we also don't know, it also relies on what do people want. And that can be really hard to understand sometimes. So it'll be really interesting to see how that goes. Yeah, I'm not sure. There's just so many unknowns at the moment. I think that for me, I know that there's like kind of this. For me as an implementer, there's kind of the researchers, and they're working on the complete wild abstract thing like Vitalik's like off on like some 4-dimensional math somewhere, and then those kind of things, I used to kind of pay attention to those, but I paid less attention to those now because I know that they kind of come and go and they change over time. So then there's those kind of far research topics, and then there's the near research topics, the research topics that are more finalized, and then there's the ones that are finalized enough for us to start implementing and consuming. So for me, I try to look, because I also have to look back as well as the specification stuff, maintain the existing specifications. So I kind of look forward kind of just enough to see the things that that will probably be implemented, and try and pay attention to those. But so much of the stuff that's going to happen after the merge, I think, is still in the research area, or I haven't been looking. So yeah, I'm interested to figure out what's going to happen as well.
What do you think the amount of ETH at stake will be after the merge?
Oh, I don't know. Very good question. Probably a lot more. Yeah, the number of validators is what really determines the work for us beacon node clients to do. So, 1 second, sorry. Sorry. Yeah, the amount of validators there are determines how much work we need to do. So as the validator count increases, the amount of signatures we have to do and the amount of hashing we have to do increases. So, yeah, I don't know. It's going to have to be more than we have now. We have, I think, 230,000 or something now. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see another 100,000 in there or so.
That's a careful estimation. I mean, there are people that are saying that it's going to be way more than that, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I also don't pay attention to those kind of economic things so much. What we try and do is keep the test nets advanced enough ahead of the of mainnet so that we can keep testing the load. So for me, I guess it's just like, as long as we can keep pedaling and keeping up with the test nets, then whatever happens is fine.
Yeah, perfect. So let's move to the last question we have, and I think this is even a harder prediction for you to come up with. But saying post-merge and in the future of Ethereum, what kind of role do you see SSV playing, if at all?
Well, I wasn't aware of the idea of using it as a backend for staking pools, so that's one that I might play. I'd have to think about that some more. Yeah. I like to hope that there's some kind of hardcore decentralists that really get involved and play with SSV. I think SSV is very interesting because we talked about it before, that it makes you be a validator in a different way. You have to think more about how you are a validator. So as it's kind of like another restriction, I guess, that we'll place upon how F2 can scale, so that we can ensure that we can, do things in the kind of homogeneous encryption way that SSV does it. So I think it'd be a very interesting research piece to look at multi-party computation on F2 as we go forward. And I think the idea of the decentralized secret shared validator is really it's really what we should be achieving for, because the price of a validator now is a lot. The idea of splitting them is great, and just having SSV around as a player and complaining whenever something is implemented that doesn't work with it, I think is going to be great because it's going to force Ethereum to build with respect to it.
Yeah, I think it will also enshrine the focus on MPC compatibility. Today, there's nothing really challenging Ethereum clients to make sure or the Ethereum spec to make sure it's MPC compatible. And with that, it will enshrine it into anything in the future.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah.
So for us, basically, we have this kind of explorer for SSV where you can see information about different operators. And we're kind of increasing the level of information, the granularity you can see per operator. So obviously one of the aspects of it is going to be the clients that are running. So I know that you don't like to do this part, so I'll do it for you. So I encourage, more operators and more obviously validators and stakers to diversify between the clients that they use, and obviously look out for the Lighthouse sort of banner that we're going to have in our Explorer. Make sure that the operators that you're using are running different clients, so Prism, Tico, obviously Lighthouse as well. And yeah, this is an important part for us, an important aspect of SSV, to have people, diversifying between different types of clients, geos, and you guys taking part in the SSV effort is obviously an important step towards that. So thank you for your involvement, and yeah, choose Lighthouse. That's me doing marketing and shilling for you because you don't like this part. There you go.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's good I like it when users give their opinions. It's helpful, impartial, and great.
Amazing.
Awesome.
I'll send you your
go ahead.
your royalty for saying Lighthouse so many times.
Amazing. All right, guys. So thank you so much. This was a very good experience for us. It's the first for us doing like a KYO with one of the client teams. So the conversation was a bit different, which I really liked. And again, thanks for your involvement in SSV, and looking forward to chatting in the future as well.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Thank you guys for keeping to push the ball rolling on SSV. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.